Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. Page 227. Putative Curriculum Vitae of Helen P. Steepley, 36, 1.93 M, 104 KG, AB, MJA. 1 year. Time. Graduate intern. Newsmakers section. 16 months. Decade magazine. Hottest and nottest. A trends and style analyst column. Until decade folded. 5 years. Southwest Annual. Human interest. Geriatric medical. Personality and tourism articles. 5 months. Newsweek. 11 small features on trends in entertainment until her executive editor, with whom she was in love, left Newsweek and took her with him. 1 year, Ladies' Day, personality and medical cosmetic features, some research firsthand until 1 week in which the executive editor reconciled with his wife and HPS got mugged and purse snatched on West 62nd Street and vowed never again to live in Manhattan. 15 months to the present, Moment magazine, Southwest Bureau, Erythema, Arizona. Medical, soft sports, personality, and home entertainment trends reporting. Masthead byline, contributing editor status. Thereafter, proceeding first to the Upper Brighton and now to the cooperative Back Bay Edge brownstone she had lived in once with Orrin and performed in with his father, and then passed on to Molly Notkin, today's party's guest of honor and hostess in one, as of yesterday enjoying ABD pre-doctoral status in film and film cartridge theory at MIT, having cleared the notorious hurdle of oral examinations on that day by offering her examination committee a dramatically rendered and, if she did say so herself, devastating oral critique of post-millennial Marxist film cartridge theory from the point of view of Marx himself. Marx as pretend film cartridge theorist and scholar. Still dressed as KM a day later, in celebration, the glued beard matted and pubic black, Hamburg ordered direct from Wiesbaden, suit from a terribly obscure British souvenir filth shop. She has no idea that Joelle's been in a cage since YTSDB and has no idea what she and Jim Incandenza were even about for 21 months. Whether they were lovers or what? Whether Orrin left because they were lovers or what, or that Joelle even now lives hand to lung on a grossly generous trust, willed by a man she unveiled for but never slept with. The prodigious punter's father, infinite jester, director of the final opus so magnum, he'd claimed to have had it locked away. Joelle's never seen the completed assembly of what she appeared in, or seen anyone's who's seen it, and doubts that any sum of scenes, as pathologic as he'd stuck that long, quartzy, auto-wobbling lens on the camera and filmed her for what could have been as entertaining as he'd said the thing he'd always wanted to make had broken his heart by ending up. Climbing to the 3rd floor, stairs, pale from wear, still trembling from the AM's interruptus, Joelle finds herself having a hard time climbing, as if the force of gravity goes up as she does. The party sounds start around the 2nd landing. Here is Molly Notkin, dressed as a crumbling Marx again, greeting Joelle at her door with the sort of delighted mock surprise U.S. hostesses use for greetings. Notkin secures Joelle's veil for her during removal of the beaded coat and poncho, then lifts the veil slightly, in a practiced 2-finger gesture, to deliver a double-cheek kiss that is sour with cigarettes and wine. Joelle never smokes when veiled. Asking how Joelle got here, and then, without waiting for an answer, offering her that odd kind of British Columbian apple juice they'd found they both liked so. And that Joelle at home's abandoned and gone back to the big red soda water of childhood, which Notkin doesn't know, and still cluelessly considers extra sweet Canadian juice to be pretty much both her and Joelle's biggest vices. Molly Notkin's the kind of soul you want desperately to be polite to, but have to hide it with, because she'd be mortified if she suspected you were ever just being polite to her about anything. Joelle makes a get-out-of-here gesture. The really, really good kind? The kind that looks muddy. It's so fresh. Where'd you get it this late, this far east? The kind you just about have to strain it. It's so fresh. The living room is full and hot, campy mambo playing, walls still the same off-white, but all the trim now a confectioner's rich brown. Or plus there's wine, Joelle sees, a whole assortment on the old sideboard. It took 3 men with cigars and gray jumpsuits to get up the stairs when they got it. An assortment of bottles of different shapes and dim colors and different levels of what's inside. Molly Notkin has one dirty-nailed hand on Joelle's arm, and one on the head of the chair, of Maya Darren, brooding avant-gardely in vivid spun-glass polymers, and is telling Joelle about her orals in a party's near shout that will leave her hoarse well before this one's sad end. A good muddy juice fills Joelle's mouth with spit that's as good as the juice, and her linen veil is drying and beginning once again comfortingly to flutter with her breath. And perched alone and glanced at covertly by persons who don't know they know her voice, she feels the desire to raise the veil before a mirror, to refine some of her purse's untouched material. Raise the veil and set the free and caged rapacious thing inside to breathe the only unclothed gas it can stomach. She feels ghastly and sad. She looks like death. Her mascara's all over the place. No one can tell. The plastic Pepsi bottle and glass cigar tube and lighter and packet of glycine bags are a shape in the corner of the rain-darkened cloth purse that rests on the floor just below her dangling clogs. Molly Notkin is standing with Rutherford Keck and Crosby Baum and a radically bad-postured man before the school-supplied Infernatron viewer. Baum's wide back and pompadour obscure whatever's on the screen. Academics' voices sound nasal, with a cultivated stutter at sentences' start. A good many of James O. Incandenza's films were silent. He was a self-acknowledged visual filmmaker. His damaged, grinning boy, Joelle never got to know, because Oren had disliked him, often carried the case with lenses, grinning like somebody squinting into bright light. That insufferable child actor, Smothergill, used to contort his face at the boy, and he'd just laugh, which sent Smothergill into tantrums that Miriam Prickett would resolve in the bathroom somehow. An old Latin revival CD issues at acceptable volume from the speakers screwed into planters and hung with thin chains from each corner of the cream ceiling. Another large loose group is dancing in the cleared space between the cluster of directorial chairs and the bedroom door, most favoring YDAU's Minimal Mambo, this autumn's East Coast anti-craze. The dancers appearing to be just this side of standing still, the subtlest possible hints of fingers snapping under right-angled elbows. Oren Incandenza, she has not forgotten, had a poor mottled swollen elbow above a forearm the size of a leg of lamb. He had switched neatly from arm to leg. Joelle was Oren Incandenza's only lover for 26 months, and his father's optical beloved for 21. A foreign academic with an almost Franciscan bald spot has the swirling limp of someone with a prosthesis, hired by MIT after her time. The better dancers' movements are so tiny they are evocative and compel watching. Their near-static mass curdled and bent somehow subtly around one beautiful young woman, quite beautiful, her back undulating minimally to a thin, tight blue and white striped sailorish top, as she alludes to a cha-cha with maracas empty of anything to rattle, watching herself almost dance in the full-length mirror of quality plate that after Oren left, Joelle had forbidden Jim to hang and had slid beneath her bed face down. Now it's the west wall's framed mirror, hung between two empty ornate gilt frames. Notkin thinks she's been retro-ironic by having the frames themselves framed, in rather less ornate frames, in wry allusion to the early experialist fashion of making art out of the accessories of artistic presentation. The framed frames hanging not quite evenly on either side of the mirror he'd cut for the scenes of that last ghastly thing he'd made her stand before, reciting in the openly empty tones she'd gone on to use on air. The girl stands transfixed in alternating horizontal blue and white, then vertically sliced by bar-cut sunlight, diced, drunk, so wrecked on good vintage. Her lips hang slack, and the reflected cheeks muscles have lost all integrity, and the cheeks jiggle like the outstanding paps in her little sailor's top. Apocalyptic rouge and a nose ring that's either electrified or is catching bits of light from the window. She is watching herself with unself-conscious fascination in the only serviceable mirror here outside the bathroom. This absence of shame at the self-obsession. Is she Canadian? Miracles? Not possibly a UHID. The bearing's all wrong, but now whispered to by a near motionless man in an equestrian helmet, she turns abruptly, falling away from her own reflection, to explain, not to the man so much as no one in particular, the whole dancing mass. I was just looking at my tits, she says, looking down at herself. Aren't they beautiful? And it's moving. There's something so heartbreakingly sincere in what she says. Joelle wants to go to her, tell her it is, and will be completely all right. She's pronounced beautiful like the earlier interested, in 4 syllables, splitting the diphthong, betraying her class and origin, with the heartbreaking openness Joelle's always viewed as either terribly stupid or terribly brave. The girl, raising her striped arms in triumphs, or artless thanks for being constructed this way, these tits, built by whom and for whom, never occurring, artlessly ecstatic. She's not drunk, Joelle now sees, but has taken ecstasy. Joelle can see from the febrile blush and eyes jacked so wide you can make out brain meat behind the ball's poles, a.k.a. X, or MDMA, a beta something, an early synthetic emotional acid. The love drug, so called. Big among the artistic young, under, say, Bush and successors. Since fallen into relative disuse because its pulverizing hangover has been linked to the impulsive use of automatic weapons in public venues. A hangover that makes a freebase hangover look like a day at the emotional beach. The difference between suicide and homicide consisting perhaps only in where you think you discern the cage's door. Would she kill somebody else to get out of the cage? Was the allegedly fatally entertaining and scopophiliac thing Jim alleges he made out of her unveiled face here at the start of the YTSDB a cage? Or really a door? Had he even cut the tape into something coherent? There was nothing coherent in the mother-death cosmology and apologies she'd repeated over and over, inclined over that auto-wobbled lens, propped up in the plaid-sided pram. He never let her see it, not even the dailies. He killed himself less than 90 days later. Fewer than 90 days. How much must a person want out to put his head in a microwave oven? A dim woman all the kids had known of in Boaz had put her cat in the microwave to dry it after a tick bath and set the oven just under frost, and the cat ended up all over the woman's kitchen's walls, How would you rig the thing so it would activate with the door open? Is there just some sort of refrigerator light button you could hold down and secure with tape? Would the tape melt? She cannot remember thinking of it once in 4 years. Did she kill him somehow, just inclining veilless over that lens? The woman in love with her own breasts is being congratulated with the subtlest possible allusions to clapping hands from barely animate dancers with their glass tulips held between their teeth. And Vogelsong of Emerson College tries suddenly to stand on his head and is immediately ill. In a spreading plum-colored ectoplasm the dancers do not even try to evade the spread of. And Joelle applauds the ecstatic woman as well. Because they are, Joelle admits freely, the paps. They are attractive, which, in the union, is designated compelling within compatible relative limits. Joelle has no problem seeing beauty approved within compatible relative limits. She feels not empathy or maternal nurture any longer, just a desire to swallow every last drop of saliva she will ever manufacture and exit this vessel, have 15 more minutes of too much fun, eliminate her own map with the afflatus of the blind god of all doorless cages, and she lets herself slide forward from Melee's lap, a tiny fall, leading with her lumpy purse and glass of matte apple juice, toward the door beyond the lines of a becalmed conga and doorwayed huddles of a warm and well-felt theoretical party. And then again, delays, dithers, and the easement to the bathroom is blocked. She is the only veiled woman here, and an academic generation ahead of most of these candidates, and rather feared, even though not many know she is an oral personality. Feared for quitting instead of failing, and because of the connection of the memory of Jim. And she's given a certain wide social berth, allowed to delay and orbit and stand unengaged at the fringes of shifting groups, obliquely glanced at, veil going concave at each in-breath, waiting with hip-shot nonchalance for the bathroom off the bedroom to clear. Icarino, the chaplain archivist, and a jaundiced yellow older man have gone into Molly's bedroom and left the door ajar, waiting nonchalantly, ignoring the foreign academic who wishes to know where she works with that veil, turning from him rudely, brain heaving in its bone box, memorizing every detail, like collecting empty shells, sipping cloudy juice under the neatly lifted corners of the veil. Now looking at instead of through the translucent cloth, the improbably deformed equivalent of closing the eyes in concentration on sound, letting the very last party wash over her, passed gracefully by different mingling guests, and once or twice almost touched, seeing only inrushing and then billowing white. Listening to different mingling voices, the way the unveiled young taste wine. This is a technologically constituted space. Thing opens right on Remington in a hideous grandfatherly flannel suit. Black and white, straight full frontal shot in this grainy black and white stuff. Bouvier taught him to manipulate the f-stop to mimic that horrid old Super 8, straight full frontal, staring past the camera. No attempt to disguise. He's reading off a prompter, monotone and all, saying, "Few foreigners realize that the German term Berliner is also the Vulgate idiom for a common jelly donut, and thus that Kennedy's seminal Ich bin ein Berliner was greeted by the Teutonic crowds with a delight only apparently political. At which point he aims his thumb and finger at his own temple, at which point his TA doubles the focal length. So there's this giant... I would die to defend your constitutional right to error, friend, but in this one case, you They used to be less beautiful, but then Rutherford said to quit sleeping face down. No, I'm saying that this whole thing, what you and I are discoursing within, is a technologically constituted space. Nous avons foi à poisson. It's a good cheese, but I've had better cheese. Mane wearing. This is Kirby. Kirby? Here's in pain. He's been telling me about it. And now, he'd like to tell you about it. Complete mystery. Why Eve Plum didn't know. It's known she'd re-upped for the part. The whole rest of them were there, even Henderson and that Davis woman as Alice, who had to be wheeled out under nurse's care. My God. And Peter, looking as if he'd eaten nothing but pastry for the past 40 years. Greg with that absurd hairpiece and snakeskin boots. Yes, but all the kids recognizable underneath, somehow. This pre-digital insistence on continuity through time. That was the project's whole magic and raison. You know this. You're current on the pre-digital phenomenology and Brady theory. And then, but now, here's this entirely incongruous, middle-aged black woman playing Jan. De gustibus non est disputatum. Balls. An incongruous central blackness could have served to accentuate the terrible whiteness that had been in ineluct. The entire historical effect of a seminal program was horribly, horribly altered. Terribly altered. Eisenstein and Kurosawa and Michos walk into a bar. You know those mass marketing cartridges for the masses? The ones that are so bad they somehow perversely good? This was worse than that. So-called phantom, but real and mobile. First the spine, then not the spine, but the right eye socket. Then the old socket's fit as a fiddle, but the thumb doubles me over. It won't stay put. Fucks with the emulsion's gradient so that all the tesseract's angles appear to be right-angled, except in... So, what I did, I sat right next to him, you see. So in a sense, he didn't have room to talk or stalk or draw a bead. Keck had said they needed a good 10M, so I cocked the hat just so, just ever so slightly like so. Just cocked it over to the side like so and sat down practically on the man's knee. Asked him after his show carp. He keeps pedigreed carp. And of course, you can imagine what. More interesting issue from a Heideggerian perspective is a priori whether space as a concept is enframed by technology as a concept. It has a mobile cunning, kind of wraith or phantom-like, because they're emotional, more label at that stage. So get dentures, she said. So get dentures? Who shot the incision? Who did the cinematography on the incision? Way it can be film qua film, Comstock says. If it even exists, it has to be something more like an aesthetic pharmaceutical, some beastly post-annular scopophiliac vector, suprasubliminals and that, some kind of abstractable hypnosis and optical dopamine cue, recorded delusion. Duquette says he's lost contact with 3 colleagues. He said a good bit of Berkeley isn't answering their phone. I don't think anyone here would dispute that they're absolutely fetching tits, Melinda. We had blinis with caviar. They were tartine. We had sweetbreads in mushroom cream sauce. He said it was all on him. He said he was treating. There was roast artichoke topped with a sort of sly aioli, mutton stuffed with foie gras, double chocolate rum cake, 7 kinds of cheese, a kiwi glace, and brandy and snifters you needed 2 hands to swirl. That coke-addled fag and his Morris Mini. The prosthetic film scholar Fans do not begin to keep it all in the great convexity. It creeps back in. What goes around, it comes back around. This your nation refuses to learn. It will keep creeping back in. You cannot give away your filth and prevent all creepage, no? Filth, by its very nature, it is a thing that is creeping always back. Me, I can remember when your Charles was cafe with cream. Look now at it. It is the Blue River. You have a river outside that is robin eggs blue. I think you mean the great concavity, Elaine. I meant great convexity. I know what is the thing I meant. And then it turned out he'd put ipecac in the brandy. It was the most horrible thing you've ever seen. Everyone all over spouting like whales. I'd heard the term projectile vomiting, but I never thought that you could aim. The pressure was such that you could aim. And out comes his grad technicians from under the tablecloths like overhang, and he pulls out a canvas chair and clapper and begins filming the whole horrible, staggering, spouting, groaning. This ultimate cartridge as ecstatic death rumors been going around like a lazy toilet since Dishmaster, for Christ's sake. Simply make inquiries. Mention some obscure foundation grant. Obtain the thing through whatever shade of market the thing's alleged to be out in. Have a look. See that it's doubtless just high-concept erotica, or an hour of rotating whirls, or something like late Makavajev, something that's only entertaining after it's over, on reflection. The striated parallelogram of PM's sunlight is elongating in transit. Across the co-op's eastern wall, over bottle-laden sideboard and glass cabinet of antique editing equipment and louvered vent and shelves of art cartridges and their dull black and dun cases, the mole-studded man in the equestrian helmet is either winking at her or has a tic. There's the pre-suicide's classic longing. Sit down 1 second. I want to tell you everything. My name is Joelle Van Dyne, Dutch-Irish. I was reared on family land east of Shawnee Prize, Kentucky, the only child of a low-pH chemist and his second wife. I now have no accent except under stress. I am 1.7 meters tall and weigh 48 kilograms. I occupy space and have mass. I breathe in and breathe out. Joelle has never before today been conscious of the sustained volition required to just breathe in and breathe out. Her veil recessing into nose and rounded mouth, and then bowing out slightly like curtains over an opened pane. Convexity. Concavity. Convexity. Concavity, damn your eyes. The bathroom has a hook and a mirrored medicine cabinet over the sink and is off the bedroom. Molly Notkin's bedroom looks like the bedroom of someone who stays in bed for serious lengths of time. A pair of pantyhose has been tossed onto a lamp. There are not crumbs, but whole portions of crackers protruding from the gray surf of wopsed-up bedding. A photo of phallo-neurotic New Yorker with the same fold-out triangular support as the blank cartridge's anti-ad. A ziplock of pot and easy widers and seeds in the ashtray. Books with German and Cyrillic titles lie open in spine-cracking attitudes on the colorless rug. Joelle's never liked the fact that Notkin's father's photograph is nailed at iconic height to the wall, above the headboard. A systems planner out of Knoxville, Tennessee, his smile the smile of a man who wears white loafers and a squirting carnation. And why are bathrooms always way brighter lit than whatever room they're off? On the private side of the bathroom door, she's had to take 2 damp towels off the top to close all the way. The same rotten old hook for a lock, never quite ever seeming to want to fit in its receptacle in the jam. The party's music, now some horrible association of mollified rock classics with old soft rock's grim dental associations. The business side of the door is hung with a selective automation of Knoxville's calendar from before the subsidized time, and cut-out photos of Kinski as Paganini, and Luard as Douanel, and a borderless still of the crowd scene in what looks like Peterson's The Lead Shoes, and rather curiously the off-printed page of J. Van Dyne, M.A.'s one and only published film theory monograph. Joelle can smell, through her veil and own stale exhalations, the room's little complicated spice of sandalwood rubble in a little violet ribbon pomander, and deodorant soap, and the sharp decayed lemon odor of stress diarrhea. Low-budget celluloid horror films created ambiguity and possible elision by putting a question mark after the end. It's what pops into her head. The end? Amid the odors of mildew and dicky academic digestion. Question. Joelle's mother's family had no indoor plumbing. It is all right. She represses all pathetic "this will be the last thing I smell" thought patterns. Joelle is going to have too much fun in here. It was beyond all else so much fun at the start. Oren had neither disapproved nor partaken. His urine was an open book because of football. Jim hadn't disapproved so much as been vacant with disinterest. His too much was neat bourbon, and he had lived life to the fullest, and then gone in for detoxification again and again. This had been simply too much fun at the start, so much better even than nasaling the material up through rolled currency and waiting for the cold bitter drip at the back of your throat, and cleaning the newly spacious apartment to within an inch of its life, while your mouth twitches and writhes unbidden beneath the veil. The base frees and condenses, compresses the whole experience to the implosion of one terrible shattering spike in the graph, an inflated orgasm of the heart that makes her feel truly attractive, sheltered by limits, deveiled and loved, observed and alone and sufficient and female, full as if watched for an instant by God. She always sees after inhaling, right at the apex, at the graph's spike's tip, Bernini's ecstasy of Saint Teresa, behind glass, at the Vittoria. For some reason, the saint recumbent, half supine, her flowing stone robe lifted by the angel in whose other hand a bare arrow is raised for that best descent, the saint's legs frozen in opening. The saint's expression, not charity, but the perfect vice of barb-headed love. The stuff had been not just her encaging God, but her lover too, fiendish, angelic, of rock. The toilet seat is up. She can hear helicopters chop somewhere overhead east, a traffic helicopter over Storrow, and Molly Notkin's shriek as an enormous glass crash sounds off in the living room. Imagines her beard hanging aslant, and her mouth ellipsed with champagne's foam, as she waves off the breakage that signals good party, can hear through the door the ecstatic Melinda's apologies and Molly's laugh, which sounds like a shriek. Oh, everything falls off the wall sooner or later. Joelle has lifted her black veil to cover her skull like a bride. Since she threw away her pipes and bowls and screens again this a.m., she's going to have to be resourceful. On the counter of an old sink, the same not quite white as the floor and ceiling, the wallpaper is a maddening, uncountable pattern of roses twined in garlands on sticks. On the counter are an old splay-bristled toothbrush, tube of gleam rolled neatly up from the bottom, unsavory old no-coat scraper, rubber cement, Negram, depilatory ointment, tube of monostat not squeezed from the bottom, phony beard whisker bits, and curled green threads of used mint floss, and, parapectolan, and a wholly unsqueezed tube of diaphragm foam. And no makeup, but serious styling gel in a big jar with no lid and hairs around the rim. And an empty tampon box half filled with nickels and pennies and rubber bands. And Joelle sweeps an arm across the counter and squishes everything over to the side, under the small rod with a washcloth wrung viciously out and dried in the tight spiral of a twisted cord. And if some items do totter and fall to the floor, it is all right because everything eventually has to fall. On the cleared counter goes Joelle's misshapen purse. The absence of veil dulls the bathroom smell somehow. She has been resourceful before, but this is the most deliberate Joelle has been able to be about it in something like a year. From the purse, she removes the plastic Pepsi container, a box of wooden matches kept dry in a resealable baggie, 2 little thick glycine bags, each holding 4 grams of pharmaceutical-grade cocaine, a single-edge razor blade, increasingly tough to find, a little black Kodachrome canister, whose gray lid she pops and discards to reveal baking soda sifted fine as talc, the empty glass cigar tube, a folded square of Reynolds wrap foil the size of a playing card, and an amputated length of the bottom of a quality wire coat hanger. The overhead light casts shadows of her hands over what she needs, so she turns on the light over the medicine cabinet's mirror as well. The light stutters and hums and bathes the counter with cold lithium-free fluorescence. She undoes the 4 pins and removes the veil from her head and places it on the counter with the rest of the material. Lady Delphina's little glycine baglets have clever seals that are green when sealed and blue and yellow when not. She taps half a glycine's worth into the cigar tube and adds half again as much baking soda, spilling some of the soda in a parenthesis of bright white on the counter. This is the most deliberate she's been able to be in at least a year. She turns the sink's C-knob and lets the water get really cold, then cranks the volume back to a trickle, and fills the rest of the tube to the top with water. She holds the tube up straight and gently taps on its side with a blunt, unpainted nail, watching the water slowly darken the powders beneath it. She produces the double rows of flame in the mirror that illuminates the right side of her face as she holds the tube over the match's flame and waits for the stuff to begin to bubble. She uses 2 matches twice. When the tube gets too hot to hold, she takes and folds her veil and uses it as a kind of oven mitt over the fingers of her left hand, careful from habit and experience not to let the bottom corners get close enough to the flame to brown. After it's bubbled for just a second, Joelle shakes out the matches with a flourish and tosses them in the toilet to hear the briefest of hisses. She takes up the black wire prod from the hanger and begins to stir and mash the just bubbled stuff in the tube, feeling it thicken quickly and its resistance to the wire's tiny circles increase. It was when her hands started to tremble during this part of the cooking procedure that she'd first known she liked this more than anyone can like anything and still live. She is not stupid. The Charles rolling away far below the windowless bathroom is vividly blue. More mildly blue on top from the fresh rainwater that had made purple rings appear and widen. A deeper, magic marker type blue below the dilute layer. Gulls stamped to the clear sky, motionless as kites. A bulky thump sounds from behind the large flat Enfield Hill on the river's south shore. A large but relatively shapeless projectile of drums wrapped in brown postal paper and belted with twine, hurtling in a broad upward arc that bothers the gulls into dips and wheels. The brown package quickly, a pinpoint in the yet hazy sky to the north, where a yellow-brown cloud hangs just above the line between sky and terrain, its top slowly dispersing and opening out so that the cloud looks like a not very pretty sort of wastebasket waiting. Inside, Joelle hears only a bit of the bulky thump, which could be anything. The only other thing besides what she's about to do too much of here right now she'd ever come close to feeling this way about. In Joelle's childhood, Paducah, not too bad a drive from Shiny Prize, still had a few public movie theaters, 6 and 8 separate auditoria, clustered in single honeycombs at the edges of interstate malls. The theaters always ended in plex, she reflected. The thisoplex and thatoplex. It had never struck her as odd. And she never saw even one film there as a girl that she didn't just about die with love for. It didn't matter what they were. She and her own personal daddy up in the front row, they sat in the front rows at the narrowed little over-insulated plexes up the neck crick territory and let the screen fill their whole visual field. Her hand in his lap, and their big box of Cracker Jacks in her hand, and soda pop secure in the little rings cut out of plastic of their seats, arms. And he, always with a wooden match in the corner of his mouth, pointing up into a rectangular world at this one or that one, performers, giant, flawless, 2D beauties, iridescent on the screen, telling Joelle over and over again how she was prettier than this one or that one right there. Standing in the placid line as he bought the Plexus paper tickets that looked like grocery receipts, knowing that she was going to love the celluloid entertainment no matter what it was. Wonderfully innocent, still thinking quality referred to the living teddy bears in Qantas commercials, standing hand-held, eyes even with his wallet's back pocket bulge. She'd never so much again as in that line felt so taken care of, destined for big screen entertainment's unalloyed good fun. Never once again, until starting in with this lover, cooking and smoking it, 5 years back, before Incandenza's death, at the start. The punter never made her feel quite so taken care of, never made her feel about to be entered by something that didn't know she was there, and yet was all about making her feel good anyway. Coming in. Entertainment is blind. The improbable thing of the whole thing is that when the soda and the water and cocaine are mixed right and heated right and stirred just right as the mix cools down, then, when the stuff's too stiff to stir and is finally ready to come on out, it comes out slick as shit from a goat, just an inverted ketchup bottle thump, and out the son of the fucking whore slides, one molded cylinder, hardened onto the black wire, its snout rounded from the glass tube's bottom. The average pre-chopped freebase rock looks like a .38 round. What Joelle now slides with 3 Phillips from the cigar tube is a monstrous white wiener, a country fair corn dog, its sides a bit rough, like maish. A couple clots left on the inside of the tube that are what you forage and smoke before the chore boys and panties. She's now a little under 2 deliberate minutes from too much fun for anyone mortal to hope to endure. Her unveiled face in the dirty lit mirror is shocking in the intensity of its absorption. Out in the bedroom doorway, she can hear Reeves Mainwaring telling some helium-voiced girl that life is essentially one long search for an ashtray. Too much fun. She uses the razor blade to cross-section chunks out of the freebase wiener. You can't whittle thin, deli-shaved flakes off because they crumble back to powder right away, and they anyway don't smoke as well as you think. Blunt chunks are SOP. Joelle chops out enough chunks for maybe 20 good-sized hits. They form a little quarry on the soft cloth of her folded veil on the counter. Her Brazilian skirt is no longer damp. Reeves Mainwaring's blonde imperial often had little bits of food residue in it. The ecstasy of St. Teresa is on perpetual display at the Vittoria in Rome, and she never got to see it. She will never again say, "and lo," and invite people to watch darkness dance on the face of the deep. The Face of the Deep had been the title she'd suggested for Jim's unseen last cartridge, which he said would be too pretentious, and then use that skull fragment out of the Hamlet graveyard scene instead, which, talk about pretentious. She'd laughed. His frightened look when she'd laughed is, for the life of her, the last facial expression memory she can remember of the man. Oren had referred to his father sometimes as himself, and sometimes as the mad stork, and once in a slip as the sad stork. She lights one wooden match and blows it right out and touches the hot black head to the side of the plastic pop bottle. It melts right through and makes a little hole. The helicopter was probably a traffic helicopter. Somebody at their academy had had some connection to some traffic helicopter that had had an accident. She can't for the life of her. No one out there knows she's in here getting ready to have too much fun. She can hear Molly Notkin calling through rooms about, "Has anyone seen Keck?" In her first theory seminar, Reeves Mainwaring had called one film wretchedly ill-conceived and another desperately acquiescent. And Molly Notkin had pretended to have a coughing fit and had had a Tennessee accent, and that was how they met. The Reynolds Wrap is to make a screen that will rest on the bottle's open top. A regular dope screen is the size of a thimble, its sides spread like an opening bud. Joelle uses the point of some curved nail scissors on the back of the toilet to poke tiny holes in the rectangle of the aluminum foil and shapes it into a shallow funnel large enough to siphon gasoline, narrowing its tip to fit in the bottle's mouth. She now owns a pipe with a monster-sized bowl and screen, now, and puts in enough chunklets to make 5 or 6 hits at once. The little rocks lie there piled and yellow-white. She puts her lips experimentally to the melted hole in the side of the bottle and draws then very deliberately, lights another match, and extinguishes it and makes the hole bigger. The idea that she'll never see Molly Notkin or the Cerebral Union or her UHID support brothers and sisters or the YYY engineer or Uncle Bud on a roof or her stepmother in the locked ward or her poor personal daddy again is sentimental and banal. The idea of what she's about in here contains all other ideas and makes them banal. Her glass of juice is on the back of the toilet, half empty. The back of the toilet is lightly sheened with condensation of unknown origin. These are facts. This room in this apartment is the sum of very many specific facts and ideas. There is nothing more to it than that. Deliberately setting about to make her heart explode, has assumed the status of just one of these facts. It was an idea, but now is about to become a fact. The closer it comes to becoming concrete, the more abstract it seems. Things get very abstract. The concrete room was the sum of abstract facts. Are facts abstract? Or are they just abstract representations of concrete things? Molly Notkin's middle name is Cantrell. Joelle puts 2 more matches together and prepares to strike them, breathing rapidly in and out, like a diver preparing for a long descent. "I say, is someone in there?" The voice is the young post-new formalist from Pittsburgh who affects continental and wears an ascot that won't stay tight, with that hesitant knocking of when you know perfectly well someone's in there. The bathroom door composed of 36 that's 3 times a lengthwise 12 recessed 2 beveled squares in a warped rectangle of steam-softened wood, not quite white, the bottom outside right corner here raw wood and mangled from hitting the cabinet's bottom drawer's wicked metal knob. Through the door an offset red, and glowering actors and calendar and very crowded scene, and pubic spiral of pale blue smoke from the elephant-colored rubble of ash and little blackened chunks in the foil funnel's cone. The smoke's baby blanket blue that sent her sliding down along the wall, past knotted washcloth, towel rack, blood flower wallpaper, and intricately grimed electrical outlet. The light sharp tint of a heated sky's blue that's left her upright, fetal, with chin on knees, in yet another North American bathroom, de-veiled, too pretty for words, maybe the prettiest girl of all time, prettiest goat, knees to chest, slew-footed by the radiant chill of the claw-footed tub's porcelain. Molly's had somebody lacquer the tub in blue. Lacquer. She's holding the bottle, recalling vividly its slogan for the last generation was the choice of a nude generation. When she was of back-pocket height and prettier by far than any of the peach-colored titans they'd gazed up at. His hand in her lap, her hand in the box, and rooting down past candy for the prize. More fun, way too much fun inside her veil, on the counter above her. The stuff in the funnel, exhausted, though it's still smoking thinly, its graph reaching its highest spiked peak. The arrow's base descent, so good she can't stand it, and reaches out for the cold tub's rim's cold edge to pull herself up, as the white party noise reaches for her the sort of stereophonic precipice of volume to teeter on just before the speakers blow. People barely twitching and conversations strettoing against a ghastly old pre-Carter thing saying, "We've only just begun." Joelle's limbs have been removed to a distance where their acknowledgement of her commands seems like magic. Both clogs simply gone, nowhere in sight. And socks, oddly wet, pulls her face up to face the unclean medicine cabinet mirror. Twin roses of flame still hanging in the glass's corner. Hair of the flame she's eaten now, trailing like the legs of wasps through the air of the glass she uses to locate the defaced veil and what's inside it. Loading up the cone again. The ashes from the last load makes the world's best filter. This is a fact. Breathes in and out like a savvy diver. "Look here. Who's that in there? Is someone in there? Do open up. I'm on one foot, then the other out here. I say, Notkin, someone's been in here, locked in and, well, sounding unwell amid a rather queer scent." And is knelt, vomiting, over the lip of the cool blue tub, gouges on the tub's lip, revealing sandy white gritty stuff below the lacquer and porcelain, vomiting muddy juice and blue smoke and dots of mercuric red into the claw-footed trough, and can hear again and seems to see, against the fire of her closed lids, blood, bladed vessels aloft in the night to monitor flow, searchlit helicopters, fat fingers of blue light from one sky, searching